Restaurant Unstoppable. What the most successful restaurateurs know that you don't. One thing that I did really love, and I wasn't sure when it came into your story, was your approach to standardizing your systems. A lot of people will use, for checklists specifically, I'm talking about the whiteboard.
Yeah.
So where were you? How many locations were you at when you moved to that approach of using a whiteboard for your operations?
I want to say 3, maybe 4.
Okay, so get into that. How did that come?
I'm at 3. I'm at 3 locations, and I'm visiting my mom. So it's 2015. I'm visiting my mom in the hospital, and I see. And I had been trying to figure this out for a while. Most checklists are on paper, and then you do paper checklists. You're like, did it get turned in right? And then they just have a bunch of paper lying everywhere. When I tried to laminate it, people would write it in marker, and it would instantly wipe away, and they'd still be checklists everywhere. People are walking around with them, and the marker didn't really land because laminate starts to break apart.
Yeah.
And I wanted something that someone in the front of house, that a bartender could see, hey, where are we at with prep? And especially before we had our commissary kitchen, it was much bigger of a deal.
I'm looking around to see if I can see the whiteboard.
It's on the walk-in door. Right?
Okay.
We could see it when we go back there.
Nice.
But it was... Each store was doing dough and cutting all their products. So they had because we make so much stuff in house. Another reason why this is a horrible idea for a franchise, we're prepping 50 different items daily, not just buying them. We're prepping 50 different items that you really had to have a tight crew at every single store, and they were showing up at 5 a.m. at every single store to have prep done before they got into a lunch rush to then do more prep afterwards. So I was like, how can I communicate this effectively to everyone where we're at currently? I don't trust iPads. I don't trust that it's not going to get floured up and broken. And then I saw in the hospital that they had a whiteboard that just said, what is this patient's name? How are they feeling today? What time do they need to take their next medication? There's still charts that the doctor sees, but it was a communication between the nurse, the patient, and the doctor. It was very open communication, and it was a stupid-ass whiteboard. And it just dawned on me, there's nothing proprietary about printing a whiteboard. The whiteboard material isn't special paint.
Yeah.
It's just, a plastic laminate on whatever it is. And I texted my sign guy at the time, you guys can do anything I want on a whiteboard. Of course we can. All right, great. And he's like, is that new? Is that something you guys do? Any company ever could do that.
That was one of my follow-up questions. If we want to take this whiteboard approach, and you have an example of the whiteboard in the book. So if you guys want to see what we're talking about, get the book. Little plug there for you. But why is that approach in your mind? Why the whiteboard approach is better than the tablet? You kind of alluded to it already. No flour, and the papers they fall apart over time. So why is this approach in your mind the best approach?
It's just clear communication. I can see who's done it and what is left to be done. And I could see it, I could stare at a wall and be done understanding the full run of what's occurring without flipping pages, without this person looking and then me taking it from their hands for me to look myself. 6 of us could look at the same thing and 10 seconds could go by and we're all on the same page.
In all my research, as far as situational awareness goes, I think that is the fastest in-house situational awareness. You have to be in-house, which is, I think, one of the benefits of having a Jolt or a checklist app is you can be anywhere and you can see what the status is. But I do love that approach. But I think anybody can create a whiteboard and have their checklist, magnified on a giant wall. But what's the trick to actually getting your people to execute using that?
There's a few different. First off, showing. There's a lot to be said about that. If you have a staff that doesn't get on board with your ideas, that's a problem in and of itself. But it's going to take at minimum 7 times for a habit to become, or for them to hear it once.
Okay.
So if you ask your staff 5 times, you're 2 away. You're 2 away asking them. You're like, I have to tell them this every day. I'm like, yeah, you have to invest in them. They're not used to it. You got to get it 7 times. And it'll take 23 days to become a habit. And it's every single day. And then it might be the path of least resistance is I just avoid it and they'll forget, which happens all the time in a restaurant. But if you could make the path of least resistance, hey, we're going to get in trouble if we don't. And then add to that, look at the why. Hey, did everyone notice we got prep done at 10:30 this morning?
Yeah.
And no one's wondering what's left to be done, and we're not going into the walk-in or coming back out and trying to figure out what else isn't made. And we passed it off to night crew, and night crew knew exactly what little stuff they had to do, and they banged it out, and there's no ambiguity. And the front of house server or front of house manager showed up at 5 o'clock, walked into the back, and knew exactly that we were 86th on this, and we had something else, which, again, a shift note, 7 shifts, jolt, hot schedules, all these could do it, but usually it's speaking manager to manager. This allowed even the bartender to go to the back and see what's doing. It allows the front of house server to go to the back and be like, hey, I don't see like any prep done, and just be aware. More communication means more awareness. And that's what I saw with the whiteboard, and it was a success.
I love that you're mentioning communication. I want to pull back layers on that. But what else can we do to make sure that the checklist is getting done? So one, you mentioned explain the why. What else?
Yeah. Incentivize the correct behavior rather than just point it out when it's done incorrectly. People want positive attention, which I learned in YMCA day camp, like they're 5-year-olds, but that trait doesn't leave the body. 40-year-olds want to get attention. They want to be talked to. It's just, is it going to be negative or positive? If you could keep it positive, like, hey, I want to really congratulate this crew for doing it, or I want to congratulate night crew for ending the sheet out right. And for that, here's the win, here's the positive, depending on what type of incentives whether it's cash, whether it's a nightly beer. Sometimes that works in some dynamics. Sometimes you're like, I don't want my staff ever drinking on premise. Whatever it is that you can incentivize with when it's done correctly, and also really, really obnoxiously pointing out, hey, everyone, look at how because they don't understand this is the new revised path of least resistance. That other path of least resistance that you thought was the path of least resistance is actually a more arduous path. By doing it this way, we're happier, we're not stepping over each other, we're having a better time at work. Do we all notice that? And then, okay, and after a month of nonstop conversation and really dutifully doing it, now after that, now when I initiated this, I was like, because I had 3 or 4 stores at that time, I want a photo of it in a text thread showing me it, of the thing, of the filled out board every morning and every afternoon to the whole group thread. And then if I walk into your store and something on that sheet is a lie, if you just filled it out to appease the group thread, I will fire you on the spot.
Yes. I love that, man. Did I cut you short?
No,
okay.
That was it.
So the big things I'm pulling from that is, one, explain the why. People aren't going to just do it because I said so. You have to say, do it this way because this is the best reason. Here's why. Reinforce positive behavior. So when somebody instinctually goes for the checklist, give them a pat on the back and say, way to go, reinforce that positive behavior. And then it's not enough to have the checklist. You have to have systems for checklists. So there's checklists for systems, and then there's systems for checklists, meaning you need somebody to go through the check who's ever doing the checklist, and then there needs to be a checklist checker to make sure that it's getting done. That's kind of what I'm hearing from you. Did I miss anything?
No, you're 100% right. Before we had that, especially at this location, because they would get surprise orders by 10 a.m., blow off their list, and I'd have a guy who would be a really good employee, promoted to be kitchen manager, and just walking around doing everyone else's work but not talking, and then be like, well, where are you at? It's like, I've been working my ass off all morning. I'm like, yeah, I could look on cameras and I see you did, and you had a bunch of staff that was just like, got done with the task and just stands there until you walk by to tell them what to do next, or you didn't, and they just kept, oh, well, I guess I'll mop the floor or something. So I never doubt people's willingness to want to work. I rarely do. I think are you delineating it in the smartest way possible that makes it obvious what the next task is?
Yeah.
And that's where people fail.